We are conditioned to view 120/80 as the absolute ceiling for health. The moment a reading climbs above those two numbers, it often triggers a cycle of clinical anxiety and immediate talk of pharmaceutical intervention, even though the stress of the diagnosis itself is enough to spike the pressure further. This static benchmark fails to account for the reality of a living, aging body. As our tissues and vessels evolve over decades, the heart must adapt its output to ensure blood still reaches the brain and vital organs with the same efficiency it did years prior. Because of this need for functional adaptation, the math shifts. A more physiologically accurate target for your systolic pressure, the top number, is calculated by taking 110 and adding half of your current age. This gradual rise is a sign of a system adjusting to maintain circulation. It is a biological necessity, not a malfunction that requires a pill to suppress it back to the baseline of a 20-year-old. The real indicator of systemic failure is found in the bottom number, the diastolic pressure. When this reading consistently stays above 100, the body is no longer adapting. It is struggling. A diastolic reading in this range indicates that your liver and kidneys, the primary regulators of your internal environment, are operating under a state of high-pressure crisis. The conventional response is to use medication to force the numbers down, treating the pressure as the disease itself, rather than investigating what is pushing the kidneys and liver into such a defensive state. High blood pressure isn't the source of the problem, it is the evidence of organ stress. By treating only the measurement, we are silencing the alarm without putting out the fire. To find the source of that stress, we have to look past the cardiovascular system and follow the path of how our body processes fuel. The actual driver behind the majority of elevated blood pressure cases is a metabolic state called insulin resistance. This condition is the direct result of modern dietary patterns, specifically the habit of constant grazing and the overconsumption of refined carbohydrates that keep the body in a state of perpetual digestion. The frequency and composition of our meals are what ultimately dictate the physical tension within our arteries. In a healthy system, the body releases insulin to manage blood sugar by binding to receptors on the cell surface. This signal prompts the cell membrane to open, allowing glucose to enter and provide the energy your body needs to function. But when we eat all day, the bloodstream is flooded with a constant, unceasing supply of insulin that never has a chance to dissipate. Exposed to this constant bombardment, cells stop listening. They become resistant, altering receptors to block insulin. Because sugar isn't entering, the pancreas overcompensates, pumping out even more insulin to force the signal through, leading to a massive buildup in the blood. This creates a state of chronic hyperinsulinemia, where the hormone meant to manage energy becomes a persistent, damaging presence in your circulation. When insulin levels stay this high, the brain interprets the metabolic imbalance as a physical emergency. This triggers the sympathetic nervous system, shifting the entire body into a chronic fight or flight state. Under this perceived threat, the nervous system commands the blood vessels to constrict and the heart rate to climb, preparing the body for a high-intensity exertion that never comes. Simultaneously, as shown in this kidney comparison, excess insulin signals the kidneys to stop flushing waste and start hoarding salt and water. That constant flood of insulin also drives systemic inflammation, causing artery linings to become stiff, thick, and less flexible. Now, the heart is forced to pump much harder to move higher volumes of fluid through pipes that have become narrow and rigid. The combination of constricted vessels, excess fluid, and arterial stiffness creates a perfect mechanical storm, manifesting as chronic high blood pressure. When we see the full biological chain reaction, it becomes clear that high blood pressure is a cry for help from a struggling metabolic system, not a primary heart disease. This interconnected network shows why treating the pressure alone is insufficient. If we use drugs to lower the numbers, but leave the insulin flood and the cellular lockout unaddressed, the underlying metabolic damage continues to worsen in the background. Lasting health requires addressing the metabolic source of the distress, rather than just managing the symptom through chemistry. The only way to truly normalize the system is to lower the baseline levels of insulin in the blood. This is achieved by changing how we fuel. By reducing carbohydrate intake and ending the cycle of all-day snacking, we allow the body to finally clear the excess insulin and reset its cellular sensitivity. As insulin drops, Vessels finally relax, kidneys release excess salt and water, and inflammation subsides. The pressure begins to naturally normalize. Cardiovascular health is found in metabolic repair. When you fix the internal environment, the numbers on the gauge take care of themselves, making the 120/80 myth a thing of the past.